When I began walking the state capitol steps back in the early 90s as grade old superintendent, I was fortunate enough to be befriended by Representative Jari Askins. Not only at that time was Representative Askins a player in my life, but also Representative Barbara Staggs had an open door policy. And by open door policy, what I mean is, when I was there, and at that time it was pretty frequent, I could walk into Representative Jari's office at any time, and did so. And she was always a friend. Now, I learned to trust this lady. Not only that, I knew that her word was money in the bank. And she would call and say, Kevin, I've got an education deal, and I need you to come here. Bring your friends. And she would also say, or she'd call and ask at times, Kevin, how is this bill going to affect Braidwood? Now, she's from Duncan, a fairly large school district in Stevens County. But I grew to know that she cared about Braidwood. Better than that, she cares about students, children, and people in the state. She moved a little bigger and became lieutenant governor and has done an outstanding job there. And knowing Jari, as well as I know Jari, she doesn't let the dust settle. It's my privilege, and I'm proud to have this privilege, to introduce the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, the Honorable Jari Askins.
Thank you, Kevin. That's a very kind introduction. You know, I wanted to come early because I knew Sandy was going to be speaking, and she knows this. I mean, we're friends. I've never bugged her while she was state superintendent, and I first met her actually when I was working in the governor's office as deputy counsel, and it was her first elective term as state superintendent. And I always knew the resource was there because I had established that relationship with her before I became state representative, but I never had to bug her. But I always try to put myself in forums where if she's speaking before me, that I have a chance to come early so that I can hear what she says, because I don't come from your field. I don't come from the education background. And so when I speak and get asked questions, as candidates always do, on different issues, I have to fall back either on what I've observed and assessed and been a part of, or hopefully that includes what I have heard education leaders in the state talk about where we've come from, where we are, and where they believe we need to go. And all of that, I believe all of that filters down into whatever my opinions happen to be at that moment, as we get asked often. And so being able to be here and see some of those statistics and hear Sandy talk about them, you know, reminds me again that this is, you all know this is a critical election year, and it's not just because of money. Let's just assume that we had a lot of revenues in this state. I would still tell you it's an important election year. It's an important election year because what happens on November 2nd is going to have a great deal to do with the philosophy of education for the next number of years, probably a decade impact. And it's going to have a lot to do with how the state of Oklahoma tries to move toward implementing whatever that philosophy is. And as I have seeing you at the Capitol, and as I have been a state representative, I would tell you that probably, when Brad Henry got elected, I think we had some positives. It was difficult my first 8 years because there were a lot of efforts for changes that I believe were being brought to us for change's sake, not necessarily for improving student performance. And we had to deal with them because in the political climate that we were beginning to see at the state capitol, it was harder and harder to find people who were informed enough on education to be able to talk about how we could do things differently without necessarily going in a path that looked like it was certainly not about rural schools, but it was all about certain schools in the metropolitan areas, my belief. And so with Brad's, when Governor Henry was elected, it became clear that his focus was education. And I know that a lot of times he probably drove a lot of people crazy, but singularly focused for 8 years on education has been Brad Henry. And thank goodness, because as the leadership changed and the majority has changed in the two houses, the two chambers at the state capitol, it's been important to have someone who understood the purpose and the importance of public education in the state of Oklahoma. And that can't change. We've come too far and finally begun to establish ourselves in some small arenas. Sandy mentioned early childhood education, and for Oklahoma to find some niche somewhere regarding education that we actually look pretty good in has been a long time coming because we haven't been able to get there. And we haven't been able to get there because we can't seem to get the connection made among policymakers that it does matter. It does matter what kind of investment you make with financial resources into educating Oklahoma's future, because that's what this is about. It is about having good school building. It is about having the resources, whether it's the old-fashioned textbook or moving into the new wave of iPads and online notebook computers, whatever the future's going to be. It's about having those resources there to be able to tap into and unlock the curiosity of the future Oklahoma leaders. Because they're going to be the future educators, they're going to be the future hospitality owners, they're going to be the future elected officials, they're going to be the future ag producers, they're going to be the future medical doctors. They are Oklahoma's future. And so to be involved in an environment that right now says if I spend $1 more of state appropriated dollars on education than I spent last year, that's a bad thing because I'll be accused of growing government. And yet that's exactly the philosophy that's going on out there this last number of years. We have not been able to get that transition made, that we're not talking about dollars, we're talking about children. We're talking about students, and we're talking about how we have a responsibility to help them be educated to achieve the best potential and realize they've got that potential. Whether it's going straight from high school into the workforce, whether it's going from high school into additional education through career tech or higher ed, regardless of where it is, what are we doing to prepare them to be the best they can be? Some of you probably either attended or heard, we were able, OSSBA had a candidate forum for the governor candidates and the state superintendent candidates sometime back this summer, and had an opportunity to visit there. And I understand, and I've been a legislator, and you know it because you are responsible to your school boards as well as to your patrons of your school district. We know that when we're spending taxpayer dollars, whether they're federal dollars, state dollars, or local county dollars, we know we have to be accountable for how we spend them. We know that. But I'm concerned, not coming from your field, whether or not performance on a test on a particular day is the best way of judging that performance and best way of judging that accountability. I'm not convinced it is. We know we're going to have to still maintain levels of accountability and be able to have some measure of performance. to be able to show parents and taxpayers that we're spending their money the right way, that it is going toward the purpose. But somehow in there, we have got to change the focus on those who are setting policy at the state capitol. Most of the time, that policy based upon some think tank that's either on the east or west coast that has nothing to do with what Oklahoma is about. We have to figure out how to take those who are trying to set state policy and educate them that this is about Oklahoma. This is about Oklahoma kids. This is about how do we try to have an impact on their lives in a state that has so many kids in poverty, so many parents disconnected with schools, and that's not always the kids in poverty. A lot of the parents that should be involved aren't involved. It's how do we reach out and ask our schools to do things our families aren't doing, and that our communities no longer really care about because they think it's the school's job. So we ask you all to do a great deal. We put a lot of responsibility on you, and because you're the leaders, you turn around and hand it to your principals and your classroom teachers. We ask you to do a lot of things to help raise Oklahoma's kids that isn't happening at home. We ask you to do that. I say we because that's what the state's done over and over again with a lot of the mandates that we send out to you. And I know from conversations I've been in at the Capitol for years, either as a participant or as an eavesdropper, that's going to continue. Because we seem to fluctuate, say, oh, well, we'll just let the schools do it. But oh, by the way, the schools, we have certain standards, we have certain mandates, we have certain expectations we want from you, but we want you to fit this all in less than a 24-hour day. So I think that what happens on November 2nd is very important. I think it's very important not just for the next 18 to 24 months, when I think Oklahoma's still going to have a heck of a hard time with budget. You got by this year because of stimulus money, because of the government. We don't have that. We don't have that next year. And the ad jobs money that some people voted for, others didn't, is going to be just a drop in the bucket of joy. But we have to have leadership involved in making those decisions that isn't just interested in saying we can't spend $1 more than we spent last year. We have to have leadership that's interested in saying, you know, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. I mean, the older I get and the more I'm involved in public service, the more my parents and probably my grandparents, little cliches that they said were growing up, keep coming back to me. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Oh my, let's see if we invest some early on in education. I bet we can help keep kids engaged and begin eventually to see a reduction in our high school dropout rate, which we know will lead to an increased number of students going to college. We have to, if we can help reduce the poverty in our state, if we can begin to send kids to school with a full stomach instead of expecting the school to have to provide that because it's necessary if they don't get it. I'm not criticizing it, I'm just saying, isn't it a sad state in Oklahoma when we have to ask our schools to take care of the nutrition of our children because we can't count on them to get it at home? When we can't find that kind of investment in the family before they come to you, how do we expect you to do as good a job as you do? And the mindset at the state capitol is that those are disconnected. Those are disconnected because they want to look at everything in separate silos, because it would be too logical to try to put them together, and logic doesn't live at 23rd Lincoln. Well, I would tell you it lives on the second floor, but that's the courts, the governor, and me, so, But it is essential that we elect a governor, and I do agree with Sandy. I think the three offices they want more than anything else are governor, attorney general, and state superintendent of public instruction. And it's essential that we have a governor. and a state superintendent, but a governor, because that's where the bully pulpit is, that is willing to stand up and say, this isn't right, and here's why. You know, I get really tired of just the complaining that goes on. It's happening in my campaign. The complaining and criticism that's going on with no offer of solutions, no offer of a learned thought on how to work through some of the problems. I am not interested in what happens in an election campaign 4 years from now. I'm interested in what happens to these children in these next 4 years. We have to have someone who's willing to be governor to do the right thing without worrying about what the next poll is going to say. And you all probably have a pretty good idea about how I feel about polls, which is, I don't think they're worth a darn. So, you know, I'd like to prove them wrong every chance I get. And so far, so good. I appreciated the invitation to come to you today because I think you all gave me that opportunity last year as well. I've been here with you before. As a state representative, I used to come to some of your events all the way back. I guess when I got started, it would have been Vernon, wouldn't it? Vernon Florence would have been, pretty good. I could pull out a name there. Well, that's because he's from Grady County. But the opportunity to come and visit with you as someone who has had rural schools in my legislative district. And I've tried to make it a point, even in my latter years as state representative and certainly as lieutenant governor, that when some of you or when there's been opportunities to be at events in your schools, I've accepted them. For me, it's not always about showing up at Carl Albert, which is like, you know, one of Duncan's big rivals, so I don't care to go there too much. But the opportunity to show up at the rural schools in Oklahoma is an opportunity to really see what's happening in Oklahoma. It's an opportunity to see how the community is engaged or not. It's an opportunity to see exactly in a microcosm what is going on with your classrooms and with your school board and with your faculty and your administration, and be able to really see, I think, in a hurry, and to listen to you about what's happening and how we need to do better. Rural schools tend to get it that we can't survive by ourselves. We have to have partnerships. We have to have coalitions. And if you've heard us talk at all in the last year, you know that I have said over and over again, I'm against forced consolidation of schools. I don't believe that's a solution. But more importantly, it's trying to make the point that forcing consolidation for the sake of saving $1, to me, doesn't accomplish the goal. Consolidation, when it occurs, should be focused on improving the opportunities for the school children, being able to improve student performance. Tell me how consolidation benefits the student, not just how does it benefit the legislature who wants to say, oh, well, we cut 10 more school districts, or we consolidated 20 into 10, and that's their mission. My mission is the people that are involved. I don't know how you get people, I don't know how you keep teachers, and I'm sure you're wondering how you've been able to keep the ones you have. Because we don't make it easy for you to do figure out your budgets. We don't make it easy for you to figure out how many contracts you're going to be able to offer or renew, because we always wait till the last minute to make those budget decisions. I will continue to fight for the opportunity of Oklahoma changing to a system that allows us to have a 2-year budget cycle. I know it would be shocking to have to plan more than 12 months. But it's what you have to do, and then adjust it every year after the legislature takes aim. But if we could change that Constitution and have a 2-year budget cycle and have every other year a budget-only session, 2 things happen. We get to focus and spend time on the budget, get to spend time looking in depth at those line item programs in every agency, and we get to see, I think we cut duplication, but we still probably have some similarities that serve similar populations. And we have a chance, while we have tight budgets, to be able to say, if we really want to be able to provide services for this group, then let's combine this for right now until we have more money down the road. We have to be able to do that because we have to be able to educate more legislators. I really think if they had time to learn about how little we spend on a whole lot of stuff, they'd be really surprised. And we're not going to change a lot about our appropriation process until our legislators are better educated. And those of you that are at the Capitol a lot know that. We have fewer legislators coming to the Capitol with education backgrounds. I think teachers or administrators outnumbered lawyers. Maybe, I don't think they outnumbered the insurance agents, but when I got to the Capitol, I know they outnumbered the lawyers. And it made a difference in the education policy that was passed. That doesn't happen now. So we have to educate our legislators about how money's being spent. The second thing is, if we have a budget-only session, just think we'd only have one session to deal with all those crazy bills. So, you know, we wouldn't have as much time to deal with stuff that really has nothing to do with improving life in Oklahoma. So I hope that you will continue to be engaged in this election cycle. Things are going well from our standpoint. You all know the last 2 to 3 weeks is, you know, when I really upset people. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity for our first gubernatorial debate next Tuesday. It's in Oklahoma City. It's at UCO. Channel 4 is carrying it. Not live. It will be tape delayed till 9 o'clock. The debate will be from 7 to 8. It will be what they call presidential style. There will be a moderator and then a panel of journalists or media who will be asking the questions, not questions submitted online or submitted on Twitter or from the audience, but from a panel of professional media folks that I believe will be more informed on the issues and frame the questions in a way to hopefully glean benefit from answers. But I do have to tell you, I think it's a little ironic. The reason they're delaying the replay of it is because there's a final episode of one of NBC's program at 7 o'clock on Tuesday night, and we've been preempted by The Biggest Loser. So my statement to you is this: don't let Oklahoma be a big loser. Get engaged in the conversation in these next 18, 17 days. We should be the conversation around your water cooler, around your coffee pot. We should be the conversation at the barber shop. We should be the conversation wherever you are. Some of you have come to me, and I've been surprised at the number of superintendents who have come to me, Sandy, a lot of them after your leadership conference, and have said that they felt they had to take a risk and tell their staff and tell anyone who could listen that this governor's race was probably the most important governor's race we had in a long time. It's about keeping balance, it's about keeping focus, and it's about making sure that we keep the ship of state afloat and moving in the right direction. You all can help us do that. I'm excited. I love supporting her, and we look forward to the chance to convince you that you're doing the right thing to help us. Let us know, JariAskins.com. You can get online. You can contribute online. You can, I think we brought a few yard signs at the back. One of my staff is here, and they'll be able to try to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for the invitations to be here. Kevin, you're my friend. Kevin, he kind of implied it, but what you did, Bray Doyle was not in my legislative district. Some of the kids that lived out around the lakes outside of Duncan, they were kids in my district, but Bray Doyle was not one of my schools. When I started out, Randall as state representative, I had Duncan, Empire, and Central High. Not Central Marlowe, Central High. And then after redistricting, I got Temple. So I really did have 3 rural schools. But I went out to Bray Doyle, and I would go to the county basketball tournament in January, because then I could visit with all the superintendents and find out what was going on, because it was important to me to learn what was important to you so I could be able to be an advocate on your behalf. If you know anything about me in the 16 years I've been in elective office, you know that if I'm for you all the way. And I've been an advocate for public education, good, quality, public education. I'm a product of it. The people I work with are products of public education. Oklahoma's investment to build a workforce, the only way we're going to create jobs is to have a good workforce. So thank you for the opportunity to have served you for 16 years. I think it's just been training for the next 4. Thank you very much.